So obviously Ben Shapiro is an avid supporter of Israel, and he's asked by Lex Friedman on a podcast with Destiny, who on the right is his actual name is Steve Bennell, about what he would do differently if he was in Israel's shoes. Is there anything that he would critique strategically as someone that has Israel's best interests at heart? And what he says about Israel's surgical precision in going after Hamas at the cost of Israeli soldiers' lives, he has some questions about that. And I want to show you this clip because I've heard a few people saying this. I've heard some rabbis bringing this up, but some people say, no, you can't say that. Here we have Ben Shapiro, one of the most widely known supporters and advocates for Israel, frankly, in the world. Have a watch what he says in conversation with Lex, and then we'll unpack it.
Before we go to Ukraine, can I ask about Israel? So you're both mostly in agreement, but what is
Israel? I don't know if I'd say that.
But... Okay, but as I'm learning, what is Israel doing right? What is Israel doing wrong in this very specific current war in Gaza?
I mean, frankly, I think that what Israel's doing wrong is if I were Israel, okay, like, again, America's interests are not coincident with Israel's interests. If I were an Israeli leader, I would have swiveled up and I would have knocked the bleep out of Hezbollah early.
What does that mean? What does that mean?
So I would have, Yoav Gallant, who's the defense minister of Israel, was encouraging Netanyahu, who's the prime minister, and the war cabinet, including Benny Gantz. So whenever people talk about the Netanyahu government, that's not what's in place right now. There's a unity war government in place that includes the political opposition. The reason I point that out is because there are a lot of people politically who will suggest that the actions Israel is currently taking are somehow the manifestation of a right-wing government. Israel currently does not have a quote-unquote right-wing government. They have a unity government that includes the opposition. In any case, Yoav Gallant was urging in the very early days of the war that Israel should turn north, and instead of hitting Hamas, they should actually take the opportunity to knock Hezbollah out, because Hezbollah is significantly more dangerous to the existence of the state of Israel than Hamas. I actually agree with that. As far as what Israel has been doing wrong in the actual war, I mean, I think that, again, from an American perspective, I think that Israel is doing pretty well. From an Israeli perspective, if I were Israeli, I would actually want Israel to be less loose about sending its soldiers in on the ground level. So Israel's attempting to minimize civilian casualties, and the cost of that has been the highest military death toll that Israel has had since the 1973 Yom Kippur War. I mean, I personally know, through 1 degree of separation, 3 separate people who have been killed in Gaza. And that's because they're going in door to door. It's because they're attempting to minimize civilian casualties, and they're losing a lot of guys in this particular war. The problem that Israel has had, historically speaking, is that Israel got very complacent about its own security situation. They believed the technology was going to somehow.
So I'm going to stop there, but I think that this point needs unpacking because it's really important. Let's be clear. Israel has shown unprecedented levels of surgical precision. We're seeing a nearly 1-to-1 ratio in terms of civilian to combatant killed. Never before seen in the history of urban warfare. Israel has such a difficult job fighting in highly densely populated, highly urban spaces where Hamas are hiding often underground. There's no precedent for this. And Lord Andrew Roberts, a military historian, one of the most prominent in the world, was saying that what Israel has done and achieved in terms of their surgical precision is unprecedented. But Ben is asking, at what cost? Going door to door is at the cost of Jewish lives. And is that moral? Is that acceptable? That soldiers should have to enter booby-trapped buildings and try and distinguish in the heat of battle who is and isn't a civilian? I've been reading this book, To Win a War, by Rabbi Manis Friedman and Dr. Elad Ben Elul, where they talk about the Jewish way in warfare, and they explain very clearly that it cannot be Israel's problem to determine who isn't and isn't a civilian, is and isn't a civilian in the heat of battle. Yes, of course, target Hamas, but if there are civilians there, well, it's up to them to distinguish themselves, to identify themselves as surrendering, as not wants to be part of it, to try and get out of harm's way. And Israel's offered civilians place to go to get out of harm's way. But if they can't go anywhere, it can't be Israel's primary responsibility to deal with civilians on the enemy side. Their primary responsibility has to be to protecting their own people. This is a war that the Gazan government started. and what has widespread support from the quote-unquote civilians of Gaza. We're still seeing majority support, close to 80% from a recent poll done in June. Support for the October 7th massacre. And so Israel is being so surgical. But actually, doesn't it make more moral sense to say, you tell us if you're a civilian. You tell us if you don't want to be complicit with Hamas. It shouldn't be our job. You started a war with us. You committed an atrocity against us, and now it's our job to determine who isn't directly involved in the fighting. The problem is that many of the civilians are complicit in some way, whether it's lending support, whether it's hiding munitions in their homes, whether it's a photojournalist working for Al Jazeera decrying Israel's disgraceful military actions, meanwhile imprisoning and hiding hostages in their home. You couldn't make it up. Is a teacher a civilian if they're teaching kids to become martyrs? Is someone who is knowingly has Hamas tunnels under their house and there's an entrance there in their house, are they an innocent civilian? Is someone who's 16 or 17 but they're fighting for Hamas, are they innocent because they're not 18 yet? Is a mother who is cooking meals for the Hamas terrorists, or raising her kids to become martyrs and celebrating when they kill Jews, is that an innocent civilian? It cannot be our job to determine who is and isn't, certainly when it comes at the cost of our own people's lives. This to me seems moral. This to me seems right. And the great irony of it all is that despite Israel having the greatest surgical precision, she still gets accused of genocide. She still gets told by the ICC they want to have an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. So even when we try to dance to their standards, they're not interested. They say, wrap it up. Ceasefire now. So the conclusion we have to come to is that even when we try to dance to their standards of morality, it doesn't work. Therefore, why don't we just do things our way and see if we have any friends left at the end? The only language they understand in the Middle East is strength. Other countries have brutal human rights standards, and no one says a peep. Israel should do whatever that she needs to do and fight the Jewish moral way. And this is not something that is a minority or niche opinion anymore. We're seeing people like Ben Shapiro stating this clearly as well. That's what he says he would do. And with a rising death toll of our own side, this point is becoming more and more clear, especially with greater and stronger evidence that so many of the people of Gaza, yes, they may be brainwashed, but they are supporting Hamas. And yes, in the long run, ideally, we could try and play a role in de-radicalizing and all that, but Israel's primary responsibility, just as it was the case in World War II fighting the Nazis, our primary responsibility is not to first de-radicalize them, it's to first win the war. Grant security again to your people, protect your people, eliminate the threat, and then we can talk about de-radicalization. Hi, thank you so much for watching. To watch another one, click here. To stay up to date with all our content, click here to subscribe. And if you're able to, you can help support JTV to grow and grow by clicking join below this video, where you can become a member and get perks including early access to videos and private live discussions with me. But most of all, you'll be partnering with us on our mission to change the world.